Missile lock detected. Altitude 22,000 feet. A routine patrol mission over the Red Sea turns deadly in a heartbeat as a hostile radar system locks onto a lone U.S. fighter jet. Alarms blare inside the cockpit, flashing red like warning flares in the night sky. The pilot's heart races, but his grip on the controls tightens. Not in panic, but in precision. He doesn't flinch. Thousands of feet below, the sea waits silently, indifferent to whether this jet returns home or vanishes from the radar forever. A missile is already in the air, screaming toward the jet at Mach speed, and in that moment, all the hours of training, all the simulations, all the muscle memory and mental discipline are called into action. But this story is not just about jets and missiles. It's about what happens when pressure closes in and fear tries to hijack your mind. Because life, too, has a way of launching its own missiles. Unexpected blows like betrayal, job loss, health scares, or sudden grief. You don't have to be in a war zone to know what it's like to feel under attack. And when those moments hit, when you're staring down your worst fear, it's not luck that saves you. It's your preparation, your mindset, your ability to stay calm when everything else is exploding around you. What happens next in that jet isn't just military strategy. It's a masterclass in focus under fire. And if you ever felt like life fired a shot meant to take you out, what happened next in the sky-high encounter might just show you how to rise, even when everything around you is falling. The mission was straightforward, or at least it was supposed to be a routine patrol above the Red Sea, where U.S. fighter jets regularly monitor maritime routes to ensure freedom of navigation and deter any hostile threats from disrupting the flow of international waters. The jet in question, an F/A-18 Super Hornet, had taken off just before sunset, slicing to the amber-streaked sky with its twin engines humming in perfect synchronization. Beneath it lay thousands of miles of open water, and to the west, the rugged terrain of Yemen, where the Houthi rebels operated with increasing boldness. Tensions had been climbing for months. The region was simmering with unpredictable energy, a powder keg on the brink. Intelligence briefings had warned of possible anti-air activity, but nothing definite. Just a vague and ominous hum of threat that always lingered in conflict zones. The pilot, a seasoned naval aviator known for his calm under pressure, had gone through his pre-flight checks like clockwork. There was nothing particularly unusual about that day, at least not at first. The sky was clear, visibility good, and his communications with the carrier were steady. But somewhere out there, beneath the sea's glassy surface or tucked in the mountain ridges, someone was watching, waiting, and prepared to make a move that could change everything. The Houthi rebels, equipped with foreign-backed missile technology and eager to assert themselves in this chessboard of global power plays, had locked onto a blip on their radar. One solitary U.S. aircraft within range. For them, it wasn't just about a jet, it was about sending a message. For the pilot, it was another patrol mission. But for fate, it was the perfect setup for a test of everything he believed in, everything he trained for, and everything he was made of. The pilot didn't know it yet, but in just a few minutes, his reality would tilt. High above the waters, away from the eyes of the world, he would become the center of a high-stakes scenario that no amount of textbook reading could prepare anyone for. Yet, this is how it often begins. Not with fanfare or a dramatic announcement, but in silence, in routine, in the assumed safety of business as usual. The cockpit was a capsule control and calm, HUD glowing green, fuel levels good, systems optimal. But all around him, forces were moving. Invisible hands of conflict, ideology, and retaliation were aligning to create a moment that would push him to his mental, physical, and spiritual limits. It's easy to believe you're safe when the world is quiet. It's easy to believe you're ready when everything's going according to plan. But the true test doesn't come with a warning. The true test shows up disguised as an ordinary day. And for this pilot, that disguise was about to fall apart, replaced by flashing lights, radar locks, and a missile cutting to the sky with deadly intention. The backdrop was set. An experienced fighter pilot, a hostile territory simmering with resentment, and a missile waiting in silence for a signal to launch. No one watching from the outside would have known what was coming. But the sky was about to explode, and with it, so was the illusion that we're ever really in control. It began with a beep, sharp, Unmistakable. The kind of sound that instantly tells a trained pilot everything has changed. A missile lock warning flashed across the cockpit's display. And in that split second, the air shifted from calm vigilance to controlled chaos. The pilot didn't need confirmation from command. The threat was real, and it was already in motion. A surface-to-air missile had been fired, most likely from a mobile launcher nestled somewhere in the hills or coastal terrain under Houthi control. The missile's infrared guidance system was locked onto the jet's heat signature, and now, the pilot had seconds, just seconds, to survive. There was no time to second-guess. His hands moved faster than thought, instinct and training taking over as he initiated defensive maneuvers. The Super Hornet rolled hard to the left, then climbed sharply into a brake turn. Engines roaring as gravity slammed him back into the seat. He deployed flares, bright, blinding bursts of heat designed to confuse the missile's guidance system, while simultaneously jamming enemy radar with onboard countermeasures. In the back of his mind, he could hear every flight instructor's voice, remember every simulator drill. But now it wasn't practice. It was life or death, real and unforgiving. The G-forces pressed down like a tidal wave, and his vision blurred for a fraction of a second as the plane strained to respond. The missile was fast, Mach 2 or more, and the margin for error was thinner than the edge of a razor. Alarms continued to blare, and adrenaline surged through every nerve ending. Yet in that chaos, there was clarity, a kind of terrifying peace. This is what he had trained for, what he had accepted every time he stepped into the jet. There's no pause button in moments like this, no room for doubt or fear. You either act or you perish. And that's when it happened. The kind of thing that makes you believe in more than just technology. The missile missed. Whether it was the flares, the evasive maneuver, the interference from the jet systems, or something greater that shifted the physics in his favor. He couldn't say for sure, but as the blip disappeared from his warning display, the sky opened up again. Silence returned, but it wasn't comforting. It was heavy, thick, the kind of silence that makes you suddenly aware of how loud your own heartbeat is, how soaked your flight suit has become with sweat, how close you just came to disappearing into the sea without a trace. The pilot took a breath, not a victorious one, but a necessary one. There was no time to celebrate. He stabilized the jet, recalibrated his flight path, and scanned for secondary threats. His hands were steady, but the reality of what just occurred hadn't fully hit him yet. This wasn't a movie. There was no background music, no slow-motion hero shot. Just him, a machine and a weapon that tried to kill him. And somehow he was still flying. Back at the carrier, flight control had picked up the launch on their systems, but had been powerless to intervene in time. Everyone knew how close it had been. The radio remained calm. Protocol dictated it. But beneath the surface, a wave of silent relief swept through every controller and officer monitoring the mission. The pilot didn't report it with drama. He simply logged the engagement, marked the coordinates, and continued the rest of his flight. Though he knew that nothing about this mission would ever be labeled routine again. What stayed with him the most wasn't the explosion he escaped, but the calm he found in the middle of it. It was a strange paradox, how fear, when embraced rather than avoided, sharpens you. How clarity rises not in the absence of chaos, but within it. And perhaps most unsettling of all was the awareness that the missile hadn't been fired by some faceless machine. It was launched by someone, a human being, who made a decision to take his life. Wars like that, personal in the most impersonal ways. He had been targeted, not for who he was, but for what he represented. And yet, here he was alive. That kind of survival doesn't just shake your nerves. It wakes up your soul. It asks questions you don't always want to answer. Why am I still here? What kept me alive? And what do I do with this second chance? As he continued his patrol, eyes scanning every angle of the horizon, the truth settled in. Not just the tactical reality of an attempted kill, but the spiritual gravity of having faced the abyss and flown through it. He hadn't just dodged a missile. He had confronted mortality and kept flying. The missile was gone, vanished into the dark, swallowed by the sky or deceived by the burst of flares in a perfectly timed brake turn. But the moment didn't feel like triumph. Not exactly. It felt strange, surreal, like the universe had paused for half a second just to give this pilot a sliver of mercy that no logic could explain. When the radar lock alert stopped and the missile warning lights dimmed, it wasn't just relief that flooded the cockpit. It was awe, mixed with disbelief, like walking away from a car wreck without a scratch. There was no explosion behind him, no smoke trail to confirm the threat had been neutralized, just silence. The kind of silence that doesn't just settle into your ears, but into your soul. And then came the twist, the part that changed everything. Moments after the threat vanished, as the pilot was leveling off and checking instruments, a faint blip appeared on his radar. Another launch signature, but not from where he expected. This one was airborne, a counterstrike from a nearby Allied aircraft that had been trailing in stealth mode, monitoring the situation from a distance as backup. He hadn't even known it was there. Protocol sometimes allows a silent escort in high-risk missions, and this time, someone had his six the entire way. The second missile, this one friendly, was already en route, launched an defense's aircraft, and aimed to eliminate the Houthi threat before another shot could be fired. As he listened to the encrypted radio feed crackle with updates, the reality sank in. He hadn't been alone. He thought he was. Every sense, every instinct, told him he was flying solo, navigating danger by sheer will and experience. But in the background, someone had been watching, ready to act the moment he was in danger. That's when the twist became more than a plot point. It became a revelation. How many times in life do we face a threat, a storm, a crisis, thinking we're utterly alone, only to realize afterward that someone, somewhere, had been silently covering us? How often do we survive something not just because of our skill, but because of unseen grace, invisible support, or a force far greater than us working behind the scenes? The pilot didn't see the Allied jet, didn't hear the missile being launched in his defense, didn't even know backup had been assigned to his flight. But the moment he needed it most, that invisible hand moved, and that changed the entire story. This wasn't just about outmaneuvering a missile anymore. It was about discovering that sometimes deliverance comes in ways you never see until it's over. That twist was humbling, because it exposed a truth the pilot would carry for the rest of his life. Survival wasn't just earned, it was gifted. It was shared. It was made possible not by the absence of danger, but by the presence of protection he didn't know existed. And for those watching from the outside, the military analysts, the radar techs, even those just reading a report later, it might seem like standard procedure. But for the man in the cockpit, it felt like a divine intervention dressed in military uniform. That was the twist. What was meant for harm was intercepted before it could hit. Not because he begged, not because he saw it coming, but because someone was positioned to protect him before he even knew he was in need. The pilot later said he would have never known the friendly aircraft was there had he not seen the after-action footage. That made the entire experience echo on a spiritual level. In life, the missiles don't always come with warnings. Sometimes we don't see the strike until it's too late. But how many times have we been spared without realizing it? How many second chances have we been given without ever knowing we were in danger to begin with? That twist wasn't about the enemy failing. It was about the Allies intervening. It was about the unseen backup, the unnoticed protection, the unexpected reinforcement that showed up right on time. And as the pilot completed the rest of his mission with a steady hand and a stirred soul, he realized he had experienced something many never do. The living evidence that you are not as alone as you think you are, especially in the heat of your worst moments. You might not always see the help coming. You might not even know to ask for it. But sometimes, the twist in your story is that salvation was already on the way before the threat ever reached you. Long after the jet had returned safely to the carrier, long after the debriefs and the data analysis and the quiet nods from commanders who understood how close the encounter really was, the pilot found himself staring out the open ocean, no longer thinking about the mission, but about everything it had revealed. Not just about war or survival, but about life itself. What lingered wasn't the noise, the sirens, or the missile trails. It was a quiet realization that life, like combat, is filled with moments where you are forced to confront the unknown, the unpredictable, and the utterly terrified with nothing but what you've built inside yourself. The moment of truth isn't when the threat appears. It's how you respond when it does, and whether or not you've built enough resilience, clarity, and faith to withstand it. What the pilot learned was that survival isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about mastering peace in the middle of it. the ability to remain calm under fire, to think clearly when your instincts scream to panic, is not something you're born with. It's forged through repetition, through hardship, through choosing discipline over chaos, preparation over pride. And perhaps the most unexpected life lesson came not from the missile that missed, but from the protection he never saw, the ally flying silently beside him, the presence he hadn't accounted for, ready to strike the moment he was in danger. That part changed everything, because it challenged a deeply human illusion that we are ever truly alone in our struggles. We live our lives as if everything rests on our own strength, as if asking for help is weakness, as if backup is a luxury and not a built-in part of how survival often works. But sometimes the greatest power comes not from what you do alone, but from knowing someone else is with you, even when you can't see them. That revelation peeled something open in the pilot's heart. The knowledge that grace isn't always obvious, and protection doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes, your life is being preserved by forces you'll never know by name, by people, or by Providence acting behind the scenes when your eyes are fixed on the incoming threat. That thought sat with him deeply. Because if that was true in the sky, maybe it was true on the ground too. Maybe in all the times he thought he had narrowly avoided disaster in life, missed collisions, broken relationships, financial ruin, emotional burnout. It wasn't just luck or coincidence. Maybe there was a kind of unseen shield, something higher, that was watching all along. He began to see that the missile was not the enemy. Fear wasn't the enemy either. The real threat was forgetting who you are when pressure hits. The real danger was in losing yourself to panic, to chaos, to hopelessness, when life tries to break you. But when you remember that you've trained for storms, when you understand that your instincts, your mindset, and your quiet faith have been built for this moment, then even if everything around you is shaking, you don't have to be. The fighter jet became more than a machine to him. It became a metaphor for a purpose, for resilience, for hope, because life will lock onto you. Trouble will target you. But just like that pilot, your job is to trust what's inside you, move with focus, deploy your defenses, and never assume you're alone. The moment you believe you're completely on your own is the moment you stop looking for the help that's already near. And maybe, just maybe, there's a lesson in that silence after the missile passes, in that breath you take when you realize you're still alive. That breath is proof. Proof that you're not finished, that you're still in the fight, that purpose still pulses through your veins. And maybe the real miracle isn't that the missile missed. Maybe the miracle is that something in you and something beyond you work together at just the right time to keep you in the air. The pilot carried that lesson with him into every mission after, but more importantly, he carried it into his life, into conversations, into moments of doubt, into those invisible battles we all fight when no one's watching. Because he had seen firsthand that survival wasn't just about skill. It was about grace, presence, and the power of knowing you're never as alone as you think you are. And that knowledge, that kind of truth changes how you walk, how you fight, how you live. It reminds you that even when life fires its worst shot, you're not just a target. You're a survivor, backed by something far greater than what's trying to take you down. If you take anything from this story, if the roar of the jet engines, the missile lock alarm, the breathless seconds of evasion, and the twist of unseen protection resonated with something deep inside you, then don't let this just be another tale of military survival. Let it be a mirror held up to your own life. Right now, you might be in the cockpit of your own chaos, feeling targeted by something you can't fully explain. Pressure from life, uncertainty in your path, fear you've kept buried, or responsibilities that feel too heavy to outrun. Maybe you've been flying solo for so long you've started to believe backup isn't coming. But it is. Whether in the form of a friend who calls just when you needed it most, or a silent strength that wakes you up another day when you thought you couldn't go on, or an invisible force that seems to guide you when the road ahead goes dark. It's there, but you have to choose to see it. You have to choose to fly with intention, not just reaction. That pilot survived because of his training, yes, but also because he trusted what he couldn't see. He trusted that even when the warning lights screamed danger, there was still a path out. So here's the challenge. Take inventory of your own mission. Are you flying with purpose, or just avoiding the next threat? Are you letting fear make your decisions, or are you moving with faith, knowing that survival isn't your only goal? Impact is, you weren't born just to dodge life's missiles. You were made to rise through them, to become a story that someone else hears and says, if they made it, maybe I can too. But it starts with choosing right now to stop waiting for perfect conditions and start flying like you've already got backup. It starts with reaching out, with building your squad, with admitting that sometimes you need help and that asking isn't weakness. It's wisdom. And maybe most importantly, it starts with remembering that the twist in your story could already be in motion, that the answer to the battle you're in might already be on its way, even if you can't see it yet. So don't quit. Don't descend. Don't let today's pressure convince you that you've lost. Instead, lean into it. Respond like someone who knows the sky belongs to those who dare to keep flying even when the threats are real and the odds are tight. Let your life be proof that resilience is louder than fear, and that even when the enemy fires first, your comeback can be louder. So get up, refuel your spirit, and get back in the air, because your mission isn't over, and the best part of your flight might still be ahead.